Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And this is episode 137. All right. So when you guys are listening to this podcast, we should be in London, having a grand old time, walking around London. I am so excited to have high tea in London. I've never had high tea in my life. And I'm very, very excited to do that. So just imagine us, folks, if you will, while you are listening to this podcast, that Giacomo and I are sitting in a place called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or maybe it's called Charlie's Chocolate Factory. I don't know. Sitting around eating delicious little desserts and tiny little sandwiches. And you can picture us in funny hats as well. I don't know if that's part of it, but that's what I imagine when I picture high tea. Maybe it's because I always think of Alice in Wonderland.
I like this. This sounds like a good idea, Danny. It's kind of nice. When we booked the trip to London, when you booked it, you took the initiative on that one. I remember we had some, I had made like a little, I think I did it at noon at home. We just took our fancy china, whipped it out, some teacups and some, but it's not going to be the same. Not as this. This place sounds outrageous.
Well, I hope it's not going to be the same. It looks like it's like $80 a person or something. So I hope it's different, but I'm really excited and just to see a lot of stuff. And hopefully we're going to zip on over to Dublin real quick, spend a day or two in Dublin. I'm very excited about it. And I just recently found out that I am like mostly Irish. Like my whole life, I was told that I was all of these things. As it turns out, I am pretty much none of those things. But I am very, very Irish, and now we know. And that's like a uniquely weird American thing. Did you know that? To even like give a crap what ethnicity you are? That's an American thing. They think we're very weird for it. Like, oh, I'm 57% Scandinavian. It's like, what? Anyway.
Are you telling me that those kits don't really sell well to test your whatever?
I don't know, actually.
Because that would affect the pool of people and the data set if we're the only ones taking it.
That is true. That's true. But Giacomo Marchese is actually almost 100% Italian. 98? Was it 98%?
As it turns out, my sister actually pulled more Italian genes from the family gene pool when she was born than I, but we're kind of neck and neck. I think I'm like 80%, I want to say. The rest is just a mix of East, I forget what they said, East Asia and North Africa, but like all Southern Italian and a little below. Anyways, what are we talking about today, Dang?
Everybody's favorite topic, everybody's favorite thing, cardio. We are talking about cardio. Types of cardio. Should you even do cardio? What types of cardio? When should you do cardio? How much cardio should you do? These are all really important questions. And I know I joke about like hating cardio. And that's just because I don't personally enjoy most forms of cardio. Like I don't enjoy it while I'm doing it. That said, I do think cardio is really important and it is something that everybody should do. But how much, when, etc., that's what I want us to talk about.
Well, we definitely, what's the word I'm looking for? Ripped on cardio for quite some time in our earlier years when we got really into, I don't want to say the bro culture, but the bro culture.
No, not the bro culture. Yikes. What is it? The evidence-based bodybuilding community culture. That is the opposite of bro culture. Yikes.
Okay. So bodybuilding culture then.
Evidence-based bodybuilding culture, yeah.
Okay, we'll get real specific with it. Evidence-based bodybuilding culture. Yeah, but that whole community, as serious as they were and continue to be more serious about what's optimal, there was definitely a little bit of mocking and joking when it came to cardio, as in like, no, don't do it. I think we all had our fun with that.
To this day, I will still joke about it. But I think it's important to understand why. Like, why was there that huge pushback against cardio at that time period?
lose the gains?
No, it was being abused. Like cardio is a tool, and just like any other tool, it can be abused. And especially in that particular time period, it was not unusual to hear about bodybuilding competitors doing upwards of 3 hours of cardio a day, which I mean, that's just a terrible idea on so many fronts. So, you know, evidence, the science-based community started doing some research into that sort of thing and found out that, you don't need that much cardio, even getting ready for a bodybuilding show. It's like anything else. There's pushbacks to every extreme, right? So then there was the whole team no cardio. And that was the coolest thing in 2014 was if you could step on stage doing like the least cardio of everybody, you were like winning prep. You might not win the show, but you were winning. And again, like most things, the answer is something. I think for most people, the answer is somewhere in between with outliers on either side. There are some people that are going to get away with doing virtually no cardio. There are some people that are going to have to do a lot. Most people are going to have to do some though. First of all, what even is a lot and a little? What is a lot of cardio and what is a little cardio? Am I getting ahead of your plan here?
Cardio. I don't have a plan. This
is conversation. Right? That tracks.
We're all over the place here. There's so much to talk about. What is a little, what is a lot in the context of bodybuilding? Just
cardio and physique change. I feel like because there was such a pushback against doing tons of cardio and there was like team no cardio, right? Now, I feel like people don't actually know what like a moderate, reasonable amount of cardio even is. And sometimes when you suggest someone does cardio, they're like, wait, what? What? I didn't think I was going to have to do cardio. And it's like, no, you're probably going to have to do some cardio, buddy, if we want to get to where you're going. But again, it's a tool that you don't want to neglect nor abuse. So let's talk about the roles of cardio. That's the top thing you have on your list here. What are the purposes of cardio?
Heart health, cardiovascular endurance, bottom line, across the board, has carryover into your sport, no matter what your sport is. If you're a powerlifter and you get in 30 minutes of cardio a week, 2 15-minute sessions, as an example, you're going to have your singles, doubles, and triples, which is fancy way of saying 1 rep at a time, 2 reps at a time, 3 reps at a time. They're going to be better because of your cardiovascular endurance. It actually helps you lift, believe it or not. Same thing with hypertrophy.
Yep, I agree. So that reason right there, heart health, is why everybody should be doing some cardio. Everybody in their in season, everybody in their off season should be doing something that counts as cardio. Now, it doesn't have to look like running or walking on an incline or using an elliptical or anything. It could be a lot of different things, but cardio is really important for your overall heart health. So that is role number 1 and the most important role.
I treat it like an antidepressant. It gets my endorphins going, which actually helps me feel better.
Well, good for you. I still think the runner's high is a myth. I don't think it exists. I have tried very, very hard to find it. I'm just like, no, any minute now, any minute, I'm not going to hate this. Nope, that has not happened for me. But the next role, and the role that is probably most often used in what we do, is using cardio as a form of burning calories to help create a caloric deficit for somebody whose goal is fat loss.
Well, this is where it starts to get tricky because people like to look at ideal scenarios when they're like, I'll do whatever it takes. And if you tell me that I should be walking more, I'll just walk more. So why do cardio? Well,
I think walking is cardio for some people.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're walking fast enough, it's cardio. Is it like, zone 3, zone 4? No, it's not like hard cardio. It's not HIIT or anything, but it's definitely good for you. And I think, when my last prep, most of my cardio was walking. I was hoofing it. I was really walking, and I was walking a lot. And I think at the end, I had to add 20-minute sessions of cardio, like formal on the elliptical type of cardio, a few days a week. But that was at the very, very end. Regardless, the tool is to help you create or increase a caloric deficit, right?
Right.
Okay. So some people think that they're going to be able to use cardio as the only tool to create a caloric deficit, i.e., keep your food exactly the same, your intake exactly the same, and just add cardio in order to lose significant amounts of body fat. And I wish that that was possible. Like, I mean, it's possible to a small degree. Certainly, if you're not doing any movement at all, and then you start doing like cardio sessions, yes, you are probably going to drop a little bit of weight, assuming your food doesn't accidentally go up on its own, which does tend to happen when someone does a lot of cardio. But to lose a significant amount of body fat, I do think diet has to be at least half of the equation in creating a caloric deficit, because it is so much easier to, for example, shave 100 calories off of your caloric intake than it is to burn 100 calories doing cardio.
Yes, and it comes at a cost too. Cardio is fatiguing. And when you're dieting and you only have so much energy and you need to recover, doing cardio might be the difference between you being able to keep pushing and not. And even if you can keep pushing, what kind of cost does it come at in terms of what your body's going to do to hold on to muscle and to train hard, and how you're going to feel and how much time it takes to do it. So there's a lot of reasons to consider how much cardio to do and whether or not to do it and what type of cardio to do. Like you said, there's walking, there's also HIIT, there's also LISS, and that's high intensity interval training, sprinting, or LISS, low intensity steady state cardio, which is like a target, like more of a jog, maybe like a little bit of a slow to fast jog, depending. But yeah, there's all sorts of things to think about, and depending on what you're doing, what your goal is, and what your life looks like, how much time do you have for it.
Right. So, okay, the third role, I guess, of cardio would be what Giacomo already sort of alluded to, which is like mental health benefits. There are tremendous mental health benefits from doing cardio. So for all of the jokes that we make about cardio and hating it, we actually don't hate it. It's very beneficial, and everybody should be doing some cardio. Let's get into, like you just started talking about, there are different types of cardio, Giacomo. So we mentioned walking, which I would say is like kind of the lowest intensity form of cardio that there is, sometimes called LISS, low intensity steady state cardio. And usually this is for a long duration. Which I wouldn't necessarily consider a 10-minute walk cardio, right? But, an hour-long walk, that adds up, So lists are things like walking.
Treadmill, elliptical.
Yeah, those can be done. So anything
biking.
like a treadmill, elliptical, a bike, a rower, any of those things can be done in sort of medium intensity or high intensity. I guess you could do like a treadmill on low intensity, but the intensity of a machine is usually going to be what you bring to it and what settings you have it on. So a medium intensity cardio, generally speaking, you're still going to be able to have a conversation while you're doing it. You might occasionally have to like catch a breath in the middle of your sentence or something, but you could still carry a conversation. When you are doing higher intensity cardio, you're not having a conversation. You might be able to like puff out a word or two at a time. And that is high intensity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's HIIT, which everybody talks about. HIIT, high intensity interval training. And I will tell you that most people are doing it wrong.
Meaning they're not going hard enough. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to jump in there, but that's okay. I got it.
I'm here.
So most people, when they think of doing interval training or high intensity interval training, people will say, oh, I'm doing HIIT. And they're doing like 1 minute that's hard, 1 minute that's easy, 1 minute that's hard, 1 minute that's easy. Or sometimes they're doing something like Tabata, where it's like 40 seconds hard, 20-second recovery, 40 seconds hard, 20-second recovery. Now that is interval training, but it's not what the research is talking about when it talks about HIIT, high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training should be you going as hard as your body possibly humanly can for like 20 to 30 seconds. Like gun to your head, you could not keep going. That's how hard it should be. And then you should need like a couple minutes really to recover from that in order to do it again. And most people are not doing that.
Are we missing any of the cardio modalities here?
There's lots of other cardio modalities here. But I wanted to bring up HIIT specifically because a lot of people talk about the benefits of HIIT training being this afterburn. There's an afterburn to pretty much all training. That afterburn being EPOC, excessive post-oxygen consumption. This is the fact that your body is basically in an oxygen debt by the time you're done, and you need to breathe more for the rest of the day to kind of catch up on that. But with HIIT, it's even more extended. So there are some benefits to doing HIIT the way I just described it. There's benefits to doing the easier HIIT too. It's just not what the research is talking about when they talk about high intensity interval training. The downside to high intensity interval training is it is incredibly fatiguing. You are basically like sprinting to failure a half a dozen times. Sprinting to failure. It doesn't just have to be sprinting. It could be on a bike. It could be a lot of different things. But anything that requires like 20 seconds of a break, that is not high intensity interval training. You should still be like bent over, hands on knees, gasping for air 20 seconds after you're not ready to go again.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our Vegan Proteins members only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at Vegan Proteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
I think anyone can safely get in upwards of a full hour's worth of cardio a week. Some combination of cardio, in my opinion, without it being considered a lot of cardio or detrimental to their goals.
Well, I'll tell you, the American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes of cardio per week, just for everybody. So that is 5 30-minute sessions, but those sessions could be walks, right? Those sessions could be walks. I think they recommend 1 hour, so 60 minutes of higher cardio per week. So either or a combination of.
Is for Gen Pop. If you're already exercising, although it's not a quote unquote cardio session, you are getting your heart rate up by training. So this is where I feel like it's open to interpretation as opposed to that's the general rule of thumb for the average person who's otherwise sedentary, right? So in my opinion, in the world of athletes, I think you could safely, or those pursuing their athletic endeavors, 100 minutes. I think 100 minutes is fair. The other thing that I feel like is
Wait,
important.
100 minutes or an hour? Because you said an hour before.
It did, actually. I guess I meant an hour, but maybe upwards of 100 minutes tops. Something like that. I don't know. I feel like an hour is fair. Put it that way. I think an hour is fair. Is pretty safe in most scenarios. The other thing I think is important to mention, Danny, is the individual. If you already have the adaptation, meaning like if you're already used to doing cardio, whether you're an ultramarathoner, whether you're a tennis player, whether you just run, whether you're a climber, what hiker, whatever it is, if you already do it and then you start strength training, what I have found in my experience working with others is that they are already so adapted to it that in my opinion, it doesn't make as much of an impact on their ability to train because it's not going to fatigue them as much. I'm not saying it's not going to take away if they don't pull back a little bit, but one, if they're already enjoying what they're doing, and two, if they're already adapted to it, I think I don't think it makes as big of a difference as someone who's baking it into what they're doing while they're training, and they aren't already doing said cardio. But I also feel like it has to do with one's personal wants. Some people have the need or the desire to train for heart health, right? Or for cardiovascular endurance. That's just a personal preference. And although it makes the most sense on paper in terms of like, I don't know, an optimal way to prescribe for somebody, it it doesn't make sense when you apply it to the individual. So it goes back to what you say so often, Danny. The answer is it depends. It really depends on the person. We have the things that we've repeated over and over again, but I always like to set the precedent, at least especially these days, where it's like, yes, this is information, but do not take it as gospel.
Right.
This information is open to interpretation, depends on you, as opposed to what's the answer, what's the formula. Formulas are good, but they're not the end all be all. Just like when you would program for somebody, as an aside, with macros, for example, you'd be like, okay, yeah, here's a formula, a mathematical equation that works. Yes, but does it take the individual into account? You got to consider your own circumstances and your own goals and your own environment and needs.
So when you talk about, first, I think you kind of skipped over the heading of whatever it was you were just talking about. So I think what you're saying is an athlete could safely do an hour to 100 minutes of cardio without it impacting their goals negatively. What do you mean by that? Are you specifically talking about muscle gains?
Any goal with regards to strength training, physique training, I don't feel like that, like any type of strength or physique training goal will be hampered as long as you can recover from what you do. If doing cardio is the difference on top of your training, is the difference between you recovering or not, because you can't prioritize recovery, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're not staying hydrated, you're not managing your stress levels well, and the cardio puts you over, but it makes you feel good in the moment, then I think you got to be a little more judicious. But if you're going to do the cardio and you're going to prioritize recovery and taking care of yourself, then yes, whether it's a physique-based goal, a strength-based goal, or a blend of the two, I do not feel like an hour's worth of cardio is going to get in the way. And furthermore, I think it will
an hour of
actually help.
cardio per week, right? Just so we're being clear.
Total. And not necessarily an hour at once. I don't think it's optimal to do one straight hour. I don't think. I feel like it makes a little more sense to break it up, but again, this depends on the person. It depends on what you want. Depends on your timeline, how you budget time throughout the week, what you want to do when you're doing cardio, how you want to do it, all kinds of things.
So I'm going to talk specifically about muscle gains because I would draw a slightly harder line, I think, than that. If somebody is trying to build muscle and they are having a really hard time doing so, they are not getting the results that they want. Two things generally need to happen. One, they need to probably eat more. That's probably a large part of it. But two, I would often also pull back on the cardio. I do absolutely think that you can do so much cardio that it inhibits muscle gains. And more so, it can actually waste muscle away if you are doing too much and not eating sufficiently. So there are absolutely cases, and this is like what you were talking about, like, does it take the individual into account? There are absolutely cases where I know somebody loves cardio, I know they're really, really enjoying it, and that's fine. But if the amount of cardio that they're doing is opposing their goal of building muscle, well, we got to make a decision here. Which one do you want more? Do you want to do cardio more, or do you want to build muscle? There's no right or wrong answer. But if the answer is, no, I really, really want to build muscle, it's like, okay, well, then we're probably going to have to dial the cardio back. And that can be really hard for some people. So
well, especially if you're doing a lot of cardio.
But that can really be the difference between somebody building muscle or not. I see that. So here's the classic scenario that I see all the time. This is women that this happens to primarily. I will have a woman who comes to me and they have a very particular look that they want to achieve in mind. It's muscular, but not super muscular, but lean, but not super shredded. It's what most people would call toned. That's the look that they want. It's shapely, it's sculpted. They're dieting to try to get there. And they're also hammering themselves with cardio. And they need muscle to achieve that look. Muscle is actually like step one to achieve that look. And you're not going to achieve it by eating very little and also doing a ton of cardio. It's just not going to happen. The body needs energy to create new tissues. So if you're not eating enough and burning it all away on an elliptical, you're not going to build the muscle, even if you're training your ass off in the gym. There's no amount of strength training you can do that's going to get ahead of the amount of cardio that you're doing when you're trying to build a particular shape.
Yeah, I won't argue that at all. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
That's like, that is definitely a trap that many people fall into without even realizing it until it's too late. And it's like 4 years down the line, they wonder why they don't have the body looking for, and they're putting in so much work. Right. That's incredibly frustrating, especially when they come aware of it and they're like, damn, this could have been different all along.
It's tragic, right? It's tragic to think about how hard some people are working against themselves. They are working super hard, but literally right into their own way over and over. And it's devastating. But also when you say, hey, I think we should pull this back, it's scary because that's all they know how to do is just that. And that's what they've always done. But, there is that saying, do what you've always done, get what you always got. Like if you want to achieve something new, you are going to have to do something you've never done before. And that's going to be scary. So, okay, let's talk about frequency and duration of cardio. So we kind of talked about duration and you kind of touched upon frequency a little bit here. So you said an hour. I really do think it depends a lot. I would say for general health, on top of the strength training people are doing, I also usually recommend that they do like 3 sessions a week that are 20 to 30 minutes, low to moderate intensity, just for general health, not to build muscle, not to lose fat, just to stay like healthy. But when we go into like a fat loss phase deliberately and intentionally, that can change. So I do like to get people down when we're not losing fat to what I just said, 3 sessions of 20 to 30 minutes. And occasionally people can drop it below that if they have a really active job. They don't need to do any formal cardio at all because their whole life is cardio, kind of. But I usually like to walk the cardio up when I could put somebody into a fat loss phase. How about you?
When I put someone into a fat loss phase, I consider how much cardio they're already doing. Mm-hmm. And I do focus on diet first.
Right.
I prefer to lead with diet. I don't prescribe cardio out the gate almost ever, unless the goal is very aggressive. And I also know that they're highly motivated to do cardio as well. And I feel like they can diet hard and do more cardio. Otherwise, I will shy away from cardio in a prescriptive way for at least a solid month, usually more than 2 months. Personally, that's how I like to program for most.
Interesting.
Yeah, unless they're like really into cardio, and I like to see what their body does before that. I uh I don't I like to start a a fat loss phase with putting a person in a starting position as well as their first couple miles. Let's use the analogy of a marathon being 26 half marathon, 13.2 miles. So the first like leg, the first what, 3 miles or so, I want their body to be in the best shape possible as they enter the fat loss phase because that means they're more likely to finish off and look the way they want to look because their body wasn't too beat up out the gate. Cardio is going to fatigue them. I want them to have a better shape at the end so they have a chance to build a little more muscle, hold on to said muscle so that by the time the dieting really sets in and stalls, they can use cardio as a tool. And they're also going to wind up having more muscle at the end because they front loaded their efforts by focusing more on muscle gain and muscle maintenance while also prioritizing fat loss, as opposed to being like, nope, fat loss is the main priority. Let's just start doing cardio. So I don't like to lead with it. But 2 months in, I'm not afraid to throw in anywhere from like 2 to upwards of 5 sessions a week. Starting off with like a bare minimum of 20 minutes a session and working my way up to like upwards of 40 minutes to an hour. That's kind of my thing. I think if I were to like write a formula for what I tend to lean toward in the middle of the line, it would probably be that.
Okay. I mean, I think that that's a fine way of doing it. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that's definitely one way to do it. I do it a little bit differently. I usually figure out how much of a deficit we need to create the results we're trying to create. Let's say a pound lost a week or something. That's 3,500 calories that need to be in the deficit needs to be 3,500 calories for the week. I will maybe make 2,000 or 2,500 of that come from the diet. And then the rest of it I will have come from cardio. So I usually do like 3/4 of the deficit from diet and 1/4 from cardio. But I do like to get that process started because I find that at the beginning of a cut, somebody is usually pretty motivated. So I like to get that habit started early because I know it's only going to go up from there. I shouldn't say always. There are occasionally instances where someone's in a cut and we do pull back the cardio. Again, for the reason I mentioned earlier, the muscle wasting. If I think we are even touching getting into a place of burning muscle, I will pull the cardio back. I actually have a client right now. His name is Alex. By the time this podcast comes out, he will have done his first competition and he'll be headed into his second competition with Mr. America, with Plant Build at Mr. America. But we reached a point about halfway through his first prep where all of the sudden he started dropping too fast, faster than I wanted him to drop on the scale. And we pulled his cardio back to like half, basically. We walked it way, way back. To slow down that rate of loss, so we did not risk burning through any of his precious muscle. But again, everybody's different. Every situation is different. Sometimes, if we're like pretty far in it, if we're pretty far into a cut, I will ask when it's time to make a change. When I realize we've hit a bit of a stall or a plateau, I will ask them. I will say, "Hey, which one of these 2 options here sounds less painful to you? Would you like me to remove 75 calories from your daily plan? Or would you like me to add 10 minutes to all of your cardio sessions?" Because those are basically equal at that point, and sometimes I might think adding 10 minutes of cardio would be preferential, but their schedule will not allow it. So that kind of makes the decision for us. Other people would way rather do more cardio than have their calories cut. So, there's some wiggle room there. There's some room for individuality in the amount of cardio that somebody is actually doing. One thing I will say is I very rarely, if ever at this point, prescribe HIIT training during a prep because of the reasons I mentioned at the beginning. True HIIT, first of all, when I do prescribe HIIT, it is true HIIT. It's really, really hard. It is so hard to recover from. It is so fatiguing. And in a prep, you're already fatigued to death. Like, can you imagine at the end of your last prep, Giacomo, if somebody was like, okay, I'm going to need you to do 8 sprints twice a week?
I can imagine what my legs would feel like after the fact and how I could literally feel my body aching from head to toe, but I would still do it because at that point, you're
Right.
going to do anything. You're conditioned to, there's no, it's all fight and no flight at that
Yeah.
point. There's no
You're
stopping you, but I can also think about what that would feel like. Outside of prep though, I think HIIT is always open, is on the table for negotiation depending on what the person wants, as long as they know what they're getting into.
Well, I think you got to be really careful with HIIT specifically, especially when it comes to running. People forget that sprinting is a skill. Like, if you don't know how to run properly and you try to sprint all out for 30 seconds, you're going to get hurt. Like, running is already a high risk injury activity anyway. Turn that into sprinting, where you are pounding into the ground as hard and fast as humanly possible for 30 seconds till you almost fall down. You're going to get hurt. So when
Battle
I do
ropes,
battle, I was
like,
going to say bikes, because I really don't think battle ropes, I don't care how hard you're thrashing, it's not hard enough for 30 seconds. But bike sprints, like on a spin bike, if you crank the resistance on a spin bike up quite a bit and pedal as fast as you possibly can, you are going to gas out by 30 seconds. When I haven't done them in a while, but the last time I was doing bike sprints like that, I had like 8 rounds. So if you think about it, 8 rounds of what I'm talking about is really only 4 minutes of work. That's nothing. 4 minutes of work, nothing. By like my 4th or 5th interval, I wasn't gassing out at 30 seconds. I was gassing out at like 18 seconds. Like, I'd hit 18 seconds and my legs would just stop working. And every interval, they would get shorter and shorter, even though I was pushing just as hard. And the pump in your quads is like nothing you've ever felt before in your life. Crazy. But I do think that in general, I like HIIT. Especially on a bike, I think it's great. But I do think it serves you better to be in a fed, like a well-fed state, to be doing that kind of activity.
yeah, and in a well-fed state, it's twofold. You become more agile, and your cardiovascular endurance gets really tapped into as far as your ability to be able to have better heart health and as well.
So
Yeah,
frequency. Let's talk about frequency. Can you do cardio every single day?
if you're walking, you could. Also, outside of walking is fine, but anything else outside of that, I would recommend not doing it before you train. Do it after you train. And
Yeah.
also,
That's
always
not
in a
even
fed
on our
state.
list. Great thing to bring up. When do you do cardio? Great point.
I mean, if you listen, if it's a difference between you doing it or not, and you have to get it in, just do it. But ideally, after you train, not
Yes.
before. And always, 99% of the time, you're going to be doing it in a fed state.
Yeah. Fasted cardio. Oh my goodness. Have we done? I know I just recorded a whole reel about this on Instagram, fasted cardio, and how it is not beneficial, but go dig and look for that. I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but don't do fasted cardio. I mean, listen, if you're just walking, you're probably fine. We all get up and walk around before we eat. Walking, not a big deal to do it fasted, in my opinion, but it's also not beneficial. That's the thing. Fasted cardio is not beneficial. At best, it is neutral. At absolute best, it is neutral. At worst, it is harmful to any kind of muscle building goals or muscle maintaining goals, even. So, yeah. But to Giacomo's point, yeah, cardio after the lifting. You lift first, you do cardio later, or you can split them up into separate parts of your day entirely. Like, if you like doing cardio right when you wake up, that's cool. Do your cardio right when you wake up. Do your lifting in the afternoon or the evening. That's another option, if you have all the time in the world.
Cardio on training days or cardio only on non-training days?
Yeah, cardio on training days is fine. Yeah, Yeah, if someone wants to space it out so they're doing cardio on their rest days, I don't usually have a problem with that either. I sometimes, if I have the option, which is not often, but if I have the option, I will try to not schedule cardio right after a heavy leg day. Meaning, like, I won't schedule it on the same day. If I have the option, I'll put it on a different day. But a lot of times I don't have the option. So people will say, I heard it's not okay to do cardio on the same day that you trained legs. I mean, it's not 100% ideal, but the difference is like so negligible that if that's what works best for the schedule you're working with, then I think it's totally fine.
Fair enough.
So last on your list here, you have listening to your body. Tell me what you mean by that, because I have not the foggiest.
Listening to your body would mean paying attention to how sore you are. If your muscles are sore and they're not recovering the way they normally would after workout, and you know it's because of cardio, you have a decision to make. If your muscles, listen, if you've been training for a while, which I assume some of you are not within your first 3 to 6 months worth of training, and if those of you who are, pay attention because you'll wind up at some point reaching this scenario. I think many of you will. You know what it feels like to train. You know what it feels like to recover long after the first couple of months, the honeymoon phase of falling in love with working out. Once you start to throw cardio in, you can feel how your body's recovering and how sore it is or not because of the cardio that you're doing. And now you can understand what that would do to your ability. And also, like what's happening when you try to lift weights. Are you progressing? Are you getting stronger? Are you stagnant? Is the movement pattern different? Does it feel like more of a struggle bus? All these things are directly related to your cardio and how your cardio impacts your training and your recovery. And I think it's all worth paying attention to because the cardio makes you feel good and serves a need and has a benefit. But what is it doing when you pay attention to its impact on your body in terms of your training, your performance and your recovery?
All right, moving on to our question and answer segment here. Giacomo, how do you get your gym motivation back? I've been slacking so bad, and I just don't feel as passionate anymore. It's so hard to go. I'll be consistent for like a week and then not go for up to a month, and it's a cycle and it makes me sad.
Yeah, that would make me sad too. There are times where the motivation will absolutely not be there. And I feel like it's only natural to go back to a point in time where you used to lift and wonder why you don't feel like that anymore. I also think it's normal to reason with yourself and think about the routine that you had and try to get it back and then get saddened and frustrated that you're not able to have that routine and just compare yourself to the routine from the past as well as how the training made you feel. And the reality is that that isn't self-sabotage. However, it's not going to be where you are at right now. What my recommendation to do is to accept that for what it is and to realize like you may very well already be in routine and 6 months into your training and still not feel good and still not feel motivated. I do think that at some point, though, you will wind up feeling a new type of way about training again, even if getting into it, you didn't feel like that. So my recommendation is when all else fails, to show up, to continue to show up for yourself, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't feel good, even when you're not motivated. And if you can get that routine going, and also be little realistic about where you're at. If you were training 4 days a week in the past and you're training 2 days a week right now, so be it. Start off with 2 or 3 days a week, start off with 30, 45 minutes and build on top of that and try to think about how you'll feel eventually down the line, regardless of whether, and just focus on getting into routine. Those are my thoughts as far as getting back at it, because it's so easy to beat yourself up for where you're not right now and compare yourself to where you were. You were at a different point in your life. It felt different. All of that. It's going to look different for you now. So just be a little easier on yourself while you're getting back into a new routine. And eventually down the line, it should feel the way you want it to feel, or at least you hope that it will. And if it doesn't, hey, at least you're taking care of yourself. I got a question for you, Danny. Danny, how do you feed a vegan 3-year-old so they grow healthy and strong?
Oh boy. Well, I don't consider myself to be an expert on this by any stretch of the imagination. I am not an expert in childhood nutrition at all. And there certainly are many people who are. So I would definitely check those folks out for sure. Drina Burton has quite a few cookbooks that are geared towards vegan kids that I have had some success with some of the recipes in there. But I think there are a couple of really important things to keep in mind. So the first thing that I would say is I would give any 3-year-old, vegan or not, a multivitamin, because anybody who's ever met a 3-year-old knows that they are picky as hell. And sometimes they will go through phases where they will only eat one food over and over again for many, many weeks, and they won't eat anything but that one food. So I think a multivitamin that has vitamin B12 and vitamin D in it, I think is really important, period, for any kid. Past that, I would say you want to make sure that you're giving them lots of choices from lots of food groups. So lots of different vegetables. There's lots of studies that say the more you introduce a variety of fruits and vegetables to kids at a young age, the more likely they are to like them when they get older. So lots of fruits and vegetables, but not just fruits and vegetables. This is where a lot of vegan parents screw up and make the news by hurting their kids really bad, is they do nothing but feed them fruits and vegetables, which is not a great idea. They need grains. They need potatoes and tubers. They need beans, lots of healthy fats, nuts, seeds, avocados, things like that. Tofu, edamame, tempeh, get them to try lots and lots of different things. And also, don't beat yourself up if the only thing that they will eat is, I don't know, like Annie's organic graham cracker bunnies or something like that. Like, the most important thing with kids at that age is that they are getting enough food to grow. So, there's a ton of like mom shaming out there for what people will feed their kids. And, I used to have my own opinions about this sort of thing as well. But until you are staring a 3-year-old in the face that will not eat, they can be stubborn for days sometimes. Sometimes what they are going to eat is going to be vegan chicken nuggets and frozen French fries, and that's what they're going to eat. Obviously, if they've not had these things before, they can't really crave them. So, take that for what it's worth. But once something has been introduced, there it is. And I think kids should be taught that no food is like good or bad. The host of issues that will set a kid up for if they are taught that some foods are bad is high. So I think it's more important to talk about how there's like always foods and sometimes foods, or something like that, something that's a little bit better, and taught to listen to their body, and not taught that they need to clean their plate all the time, etc. But how much food does a kid that's 3 years old actually need? Somewhere in the vicinity of 40 calories per pound. So if your 3-year-old is like 35 pounds, let me do some quick math here. 35 pounds times 40 calories, whoops, not 340 calories, is 1,400 calories. So, don't stick your kid on a meal plan or give them macros like an adult might follow if they have goals. But, that should be like sort of the ballpark. They might need more than that. And that's fine, but you don't want to have them consistently be under eating. But in my experience, which is limited, right? I have limited experience here, feeding vegan kids a wide variety of foods and talking to them about things like hunger and snacks. And Daisy asked me the other day, she said, what do you do when you're not hungry, but you want to eat food? And like, holy girl, I made an entire career out of talking to people about exactly. So we had a good conversation about it. But food conversations with kids, I think, are really, really important. But at 3, lots of variety, lots of fun around food, lots of colors. And Daisy and Desmond, who first came to us when they were 5.5 months and 2.5 years, are now 4 and 6.5. Healthy, great on their height, weight, developmental stuff, all things very good, vegan since birth.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Stay in touch with us on socials, hit the contact button on veganproteins.com, and you will receive a video response from one of us. Consider joining one of our challenges or get a membership with Muscles by Brussels and to be a part of our community. Once again, my name is Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And we'll talk to you soon.